welcome to today's Business as Unusual webinar, where we are speaking with badass industry leaders about helping us thrive and survive in today's economic climate. My name is Lisa Baining, and I will be your moderator and host for today's session. I am joined by three lovely presenters. We have Chris McKee, founder of Venturity Financial Partners, as well as Deanna Walker, who is the member team manager. Also, our third speaker is our own Amy Anderson, Director of Client Services at Caffeine. So we are in for a treat today to learn from these three individuals really what it takes to create the ultimate client experience. As a few housekeeping pieces, we do have everyone on mute today, so I encourage you to please use the chat function or the Q&A option to ask any questions. Today's session is meant to be interactive, so we want to hear from you and your questions. Amy, Chris, and Deanna all have some wonderful information as well as some graphics and other illustrations to help show you how to create that client experience. So we can pull those slides back up and go through them. By all means, please make sure your voice is heard during today's conversation. As we were starting the webinar, I was calling out a few of our winners today. So as part of our Business as Unusual webinar series, we are giving away to the first 5 people who register a $20 Grubhub gift card. So excited today that we've supported businesses like the Stray Hen Cafe, Bangkok at Beltline, and Experience Pancakes and Cafe. So one of our treats, but definitely trying to help other small businesses such as ourselves as we continue to weather this new normal, or whatever you'd like to call it. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start today's presentation. So I'm going to turn things first over to our speakers. And Amy, if you could give us a little bit of a highlight on you and your role at Caffeine.
Sure. So for those who aren't familiar with Caffeine, we are a growth consultancy and we build badass brands that people want to work with and for. I am Director of Client Services, and I like to talk about my role in 3 different ways. I oversee the account management department, which Lisa is a part of. I have my own book of business, so I manage my own set of clients. And then I also sit on the leadership team where our exceptional client experience is one of our strategic pillars.
And Chris and Deanna, whoever would like to go first. So Chris, as the founder, will default to you.
All right, good. Well, Venturity Financial Partners, as it says here, we've been around since 2001, so almost 20 years now. Deanna and I have worked together here for 17 of those 21 years now, and we really focus on doing day-to-day accounting and CFO services for small to medium-sized growing companies, both in the profit and nonprofit world. So, Deanna is really our Chief Revenue Officer, so she and I certainly have partnered together on this client experience process that we've gone through that we'll talk a little bit more about. And I will tell you, she was really the catalyst behind that. She, as the Chief Revenue Officer, is really responsible for ultimately responsible for our relationships with clients. And she identified the issues up front that we had. And so, so that's why Deanna and I are doing this together, because she's really had a big hand in being a catalyst for change within our organization.
Welcome, Deanna. Anything else you'd like to share about your role? I know Chris did an amazing job really describing what you guys are over to.
Yeah, no, I think I'll leave it at that. I'm just happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Great. So we're going to go ahead. We'll start with our first question today, which really, Chris, you had started touching on this. So if you and Deanna could share a little bit more on what really drove you to start looking at the exceptional client experience. You definitely had a few business situations that helped necessitate this journey.
Yeah, I'll let Deanna take a shot at that.
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to, I would say, 2017, where we really started kind of actively taking a look at it. I will be honest and tell you that I felt it before, but I wasn't exactly sure what it was, and I sort of couched it as being a little bit on a hamster wheel, someone who at that time was very intimately involved in bringing in new business for the firm. I felt like we just were bringing in business to replace business that was going out the door. And, you know, for a while we had sort of the mindset that just part of business was that you were going to have, for whatever reason, a certain amount of clients that you were just going to lose every year. And that was kind of the mindset that we lived with for a while. And it wasn't until we had a retreat in December of 17 where we really took a hard look at that number and found that, you know, we were losing anywhere in the last 3 years from $500,000 to $1 million of business a year. And that was $1 million or a little over was our target for new business. So we were like, this cannot keep going, you know? So we really said, all right, we've got to fix this. And, you know, we wanted to really understand more. So we assembled a group of folks and we dubbed ourselves the client experience team to really get together and take a step back and see if we could reimagine the experience for our clients. And we're a group of accountants here. So, but we have really great creative ideas. And so we had folks from all subsections of our organization. It just wasn't Chris and I telling everybody what to do. In fact, we tried really hard to be quiet and just let the folks self-discover. And we went through a whole analysis period of kind of, you know, what was the cause of that? We definitely realized that it was impeding our growth as an organization. And if we could turn that around, it would be one of the biggest drivers of growth for us to not lose as many clients. And we all know that customer acquisition can be very costly. But we really got into the details of what it was that was driving that and boiled it down to controllable, uncontrollable, and then what we could do about it.
Oh, great. And I know Amy on the Red Caffeine side also looking at customer attrition, but you came in with a special role to Red Caffeine. If you could explain that for our audience.
Sure. So when I was hired, one of my key responsibilities was to really oversee that exceptional client experience strategic pillar and build the RC retention business model. I mean, it was great that we had this as a pillar because of course, who doesn't want to deliver on an exceptional client experience, but it wasn't defined. There really wasn't any substance behind it. We knew we had great clients, great retention rate. We were doing well in new business, but we really wanted to dig in and understand why so we could make it a more scalable part of our business. We had just brought in a lot of new clients. We wanted to turn them into those long-term partnerships. You know, as Deanna said, you know, everybody knows it costs a heck of a lot more money to bring in a new client than to retain a current one. And with the new business efforts we had just gone through, we were feeling that. So we really wanted to make sure that we were, you know, putting the investment to good use and really making sure that we would put those clients on a path to a long-term partnership. We really believed that investing here would lead to higher customer satisfaction rates, reduce that customer attrition, and increase the revenues. We also felt that this would be a way to align our internal team as well on how do we talk about what we do? How do we talk about, you know, what makes us so special and unique and that people really want to work with us? So to give our team that vision and that consistency in what we offer was something that just became a part of the project.
Chris, anything you'd like to add? I know, as Deanna said, it was definitely a process and a journey for you, and it wasn't done overnight.
Yeah, it was a big eye opener for me because when we actually put together the numbers and how much attrition we had, it was a little bit shocking. I know that in the back of my mind, I thought it was less than it was. And so, but once we started talking about it, I think Deanna and I realized that this was not going to be a problem that we would solve overnight as well. So it was really a 2-year journey, believe it or not. And that we pulled together an internal work group, which is kind of what we do when we want to tackle a big problem. And as Deanna said, we had some folks from throughout the organization. And by starting with attrition, we started asking ourselves, and we went client by client for the previous couple of years and said, okay, why did we lose this client? Why did we lose this client? And we started to see some commonalities, and that really helped us start down the path of how do we need to transform our relationships.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, let's dive in and tell our audience a little bit more. In case you're not familiar, what is the ultimate client experience or an exceptional client experience, what we're trying to craft? So I know, Amy, you've got a great graphic to share with us, which I'm going to pull up on the screen. So you can start telling us a little bit more about what exactly are we talking about?
Sure. So I believe that an exceptional client experience is basically what you do that keeps customers working with you, that keeps them happy. It's what is your stickiness factor? So, you know, as I mentioned before, this was something that we really wanted to uncover for ourselves. So we worked to define what ours was. So we did internal brainstorming sessions. We talked to clients, we talked to mentors, we talked to friends in our industry to really help define what makes us unique and special. You know, as the graphic shows, we're looking here for partnership in perpetuity. And I know Julie would want me to do the hand gestures right now too, but that's really what we're going for, is what's the recipe that gives us that partnership. So as we were going through this process, because I agree that this did not happen overnight, this was quite a lengthy process of, you know, really diving into ourselves and figuring out what worked and, you know, what we wanted to talk about. And a mentor we were working with at the time said one of my most favorite quotes, and he, you know, really helped us see that, you know, you need to tell people you're going to love working with us, and here's why. Don't be afraid to share why you're amazing. So, you know, we knew early on that this was not going to just be something we hung on a conference room wall. We wanted it to be something that we could share with clients. So we landed on these principles and built a cool graphic for it. So the graphics, or the principles themselves, have been slightly refined over the years, but the core of what we do and bring to the table remains the same. One thing you'll see about the graphic is that it's also not just about what Red Caffeine does, but it's also about what the client needs to bring to the table. You know, we realize that in our most successful partnerships, that it really just wasn't about what we were doing, but it was about what was happening on the client's end. You know, what are those expectations that we needed them to bring to the party to make sure that both sides were really in it for the partnership in perpetuity.
That's great. And I know Chris and Deanna, and I'll direct this to Chris specifically, as Amy's talking about, you know, partnership and advising the expectations, you actually literally used that word when you started talking about your trusted advisor approach. So similar concepts. So Chris, could you explain kind of where Venturity's trajectory took you?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because as we started on this journey, we actually were kind of led by you guys a little bit. We were talking, kind of brainstorming with your team on some open book management stuff, and we got to talking about some of the struggles that we'd had with client experience, and you guys were out ahead of us in all of this and had that graphic developed, and boy, it was another real catalyst to kind of get us going on the journey and kind of point us in the right direction. And that idea of setting expectations with the client, Deanna's going to talk about that in a little while, and that are mutual shared expectations, I think are a big piece of it. So so I think you know, we owe a debt of gratitude to your team for helping crystallize for us and catalyze for us a little bit of where we needed to head. And so where we ended up after going through our process of what causes a client to leave, what causes a client to stay, and what do we need to change in order to make it better and to improve our retention rates, we kind of came up with a multi-point plan. And the key to that is really developing a trusted advisor relationship with the client. We really, when we started Venturity, saw ourselves in very much a transactional role as their accounting department. We pay the bills and close the books and do all those kind of things. But we saw ourselves as just the humble bookkeepers, which is great in many ways, that approaching it from a humble attitude of service. But it held us back from really using our expertise to help inform and advise our clients. And so as we looked at the components, and we realized there were several things we needed to change about our relationship with the client, setting expectations, having regular regroup meetings with them, something that we took away from your process as well. But really kind of those tools help us become a trusted advisor. And it's kind of a cliched term, but I'll tell you, we haven't come up with anything better. We've really got to, we learn a lot from the accounting that we do about what's going on with the client's business. And we need to use that expertise that we have and the expertise we have from working with all of our various clients to help our clients in those crucial moments as a trusted advisor. As accountants, we're naturally seen as a trusted party, but we have to also earn that trust through the way that we interact with our clients. So I think a big piece of our journey was we're doing a great job. One of our values is great accounting, and that's the one we always knocked out of the park. We do a great job with the accounting. We have another value called exceptional service, and that's where we felt like we were really kind of falling down on the job, and it wasn't complementing the great accounting that we do. And so, a big piece of this journey was figuring out what tools we needed to put in place to transform the way that we interact with our clients, so that not only are we giving them great accounting, but we're helping them do something with that great accounting through being a trusted advisor and being there when they have questions, and being more than just a humble bookkeeper, being that trusted advisor. But it's a process. It's a trust building process in order to get there, because trust is the first part of that word, trusted, and it takes time to build that trust. So, Deanna, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just would add two quick things. I think one of the things early on that someone coined in our group, and then we just sort of took everything in our decision making back to that, is we wanted to be the folks that get the call. And super important. So what does that look like? What do we need to do? How do we need to position ourselves as an organization, and really at every level in the organization, to position us to get that call, whether it has to do with accounting or not, just be in that inner circle with our clients, that they're, when something comes up, whether it's a situation or something great to share or what have you, we're on that short list of who they're going to pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to tell you about this, or I need to pick your, bend your ear about it. I think the other thing internally that became super important is, because we are a team-based organization, we wanted to make sure that we thought about how everyone at every level in the organization could be a trusted advisor in their own way in the roles that they play. So it wasn't just something that the folks that managed the relationships at the top level had to take on and bear by themselves. It was something that you'll see when we talk about kind of our approach, that it transcends our entire organization from the beginning of our relationship to the end, but it also transcends everyone on our team, from the person that is sitting at the front desk and greeting our guests to Chris, really, and any and everyone in between, and what impact they can individually make to get us as a group to earn that status.
Well, let's actually dive into the tools, Deanna, because I know your team really thought through when you said the entire team got together of how do you bring that from the bottom up and the top down, so everyone had very clear expectations. And Venturity did a great job of really setting that very clearly for your team.
Yeah, no, it's a great segue. And Chris, I'm glad that you gave credit to Red Caffeine, because it was those conversations that we had with them that really gave us some clear direction on sort of where we needed to go. So our version of the sheet that you guys saw just a little bit ago is this expectation document that's here on the left. And then we have some internal planning documents that we use. But essentially, the process, and again, this was developed by the work group that we had. And it took us a little time, and kudos to Chris, because I probably would still be working through the details and making sure it was perfect before we rolled it out. But he encouraged us to get a few things done and then to test it and try it, which was allowed us to kind of put it into practice sooner. But we developed a whole program that literally starts at the beginning of our sales process, like I said, and continues through to when and if we exit a relationship, even though our goal, and we set a goal, which I think is important, is to have a 12-month consecutive period without losing a client at all to anything that's in our control, right? So that was goal first and foremost. And we rolled it out through a series of regroup meetings. But before we got to that, our BD person is now talking about it in the beginning stages of our relationship, how great accounting is important, but also the way we approach our relationships and how we have open lines of communication and an active partnership that stand right alongside great accounting. So those conversations are happening in the sales process. We even added a section to our formal agreement that our clients sign that talks about the mutual expectations and holding up these expectations. They formally get introduced in this process to at what we call the implementation meeting, where we're having a kickoff call and or a kickoff meeting, if you will. And we literally go through these expectations. And like Red Caffeine, ours is broken down into two areas. And we start with what we're committing to them, but then we also talk about the commitment and the expectations that we have on our end, so that we can have a really strong relationship. And there's lots of points here, but we ask the clients to talk about what the ones that are most meaningful to them, and we make note of those. We talk about the ones that we think and feel could be important in the context of this relationship, because we have different scopes that sometimes we do with our clients. So sometimes certain things take a little bit more precedent than others in these various categories. So we start that process in the implementation meeting, and then we reevaluate in the first year. We get together and look at this document and see how things are going about every 3 months with our clients, just to make sure that we're still on track with them. And that's a meeting that is generally, it might be added on to a meeting where we talk about financials, but it's very much a purposeful meeting with a set agenda and a process, because our folks, again, like process. So we've got agendas, we have sample emails that we do to get the meeting going. It's important that we have all key decision makers in that meeting. So there's a whole host of things that we want to make sure that we check the box on, such that that meeting is productive for both parties involved. And every time we have this meeting, we revisit what they said was important before. And then we kind of gut check ourselves, us and them, on how we're doing on that. And then we make any adjustments that we need to along the lines of expectations. So after year one, we have these meetings annually, and then as needed. So if something happens that there's a transition at the client level or at our level, we have a great opportunity now to get back to the table and have these meetings to discuss things that could affect the relationship. And we would solve the client's plane a lot of times historically in the beginning when they had an issue, and then we get up and run really well, and then we never thought to go back and ask them again, hey, how are we doing? And or have your priorities changed? And I think that's a lot of times where we got off track. And so now we have a really good mechanism to do that. And it helps our folks because we set those expectations in the beginning, and then everybody knows that we are going to go back and revisit on a regular basis. The matrix on the right is just part of what we call our toolbox to help our folks internally consistently prepare. We're a team-based organization, and so we wanted to have, just like we have consistency on the accounting, we want to have consistency as to the way we approach these types of meetings, and give our folks, a process from which to work on that then they can take and make their own based on how the relationships are going or what they need to talk about. So we have one of these matrix planners for sort of every meeting that we do in that first year. Some are a little bit different, and so people can use these tools as a resource when they're planning for the meeting. And then we've got some measurement that we'll talk to in a minute that sort of gut checks how we're doing overall on our process. We're in our first year. And, it was interesting. COVID threw a little bit of a wrench, but we've really done well in terms of getting out there with these meetings and encouraging our folks to try it. We did a 2-day training session to kind of get everybody up to speed, but it's nothing like just going through the process and trying it to really help you get a feel for how it's going to work. Amy?
Great, Deanna. And actually, before Amy, I know you've got a few things to add on. There's a great question for both of you. So talking about the client experience, and I know, Deanna, you're mentioning a lot about your team and, all being located at one spot. And I know, Amy, same thing, we're at Caffeine. We're remote right now, but how do you see having team members overseas potentially affecting your client experience? Or have you done anything to help your remote workers, whether in, their guest room or if they're across the country, to help make sure that that ultimate client experience is really being felt still?
Yeah, I'll answer quickly. And then, again, I think we really focused on trying to have everybody in the organization know how they can make an impact on their aspects of what they do. So even answering a simple email in the right kind of way can be something that contributes to being a trusted advisor in that overall client experience. So, our preference would be to have these regroup meetings in person. We haven't been able to do that quite as much, even though we're very familiar and have been with working in a Zoom type of environment, because we do operate generally with our clients on an outsourced basis. But it's become more important than ever to make sure that when we have these meetings, we get our folks on our team as well as clients to turn their videos on and really have as much as possible, that interaction. So the remoteness, you have to get a little bit more creative with how you do it. We do a lot of prep before the meetings as well, to make sure that, we know who's going to lead what part of it. And so we have some good continuity there. And that's helpful in terms of bringing us together, even though we're not really together physically. Chris, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I was going to just add it because somebody specifically asked on the India piece, because we do have a team over in India. And those folks are not currently anyway, customer facing, client facing. And having that India team has allowed that India team to handle a lot more of the transactional accounting pieces and freed up our team here to spend more time with the clients and client facing. So currently our client experience program really focuses on the team here because that's really where we can add value to the relationship. And so, so I can't answer like exactly how that would work when working with our team over in India, because at this point we're still, we really own that interpersonal relationship we still own on this side of the ocean. I don't have an objection to them eventually building a relationship, but that's just kind of the way that we're structured right now, is the India team really handles a lot of the transactional back office type work, allowing our team to really spend time with the client, be analytical, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would just echo all the sentiments around communication, whether it's with your internal teams or your clients themselves. This has definitely changed how we operate, but the principles are still the same. And, for us, we meet really regularly as a full team. We're a part of EOS. We follow the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So we have weekly meetings as a full team where we're talking about this. We're talking about what's going well with clients. We're talking about, some areas of concern to make sure that everybody is really on the same page. So everybody has a voice too in determining, okay, what do we need to do here? Or what's an idea we can do here? And then in terms of clients, we're trying to be really creative too. We have a good history and record of doing a lot of video calls, doing a lot of conference calls. So for us, this was a little just natural evolution of what we've been doing, but we have definitely been trying to make it to raise that experience, even being online. So we do a lot of Grubhub lunches, or we do, happy hours with our clients where we send them the Grubhub vouchers and say, get some appetizers and drinks on us, or let's have a virtual lunch together and still break bread together and have those conversations. But, there's so many people have great, unique ideas out there. And I think we're all just taking little pieces of what we're hearing working from others to make the experience still positive and still feel as team-oriented and focused on the goals we possibly can.
Oh, great, Amy. That actually segues greatly into your part, because I know too, as Deanna's talking about a lot of the tools that Venturity has, as you're talking about ways that we're virtually connecting with our clients, there's also a tool set that we've been using to make sure that we're still maintaining that connection, we're setting expectations. So could you share a little bit more about some of the tools in our kit that are useful for everyone?
Sure. So I'm going to echo something that Deanna and Chris talked about too, with just our exceptional client experience graphic, just to be able to have that as a living, breathing piece to start the conversation, to give us a chance to share why we're different, what you can expect, what we're working on for the relationship. So we use that graphic in a lot of places, client onboarding, quarterly meetings, revisiting with the client to make sure that everyone is meshing on those same principles. But I do have to say it's definitely a big hit in those new business meetings, and it really changes the tone when you switch it over and you say, hey, prospective client, this is what we expect of you. And when we bring that back up into meetings, it is a little, oh yeah, I have a role in this too, and I have to help set the team up for success. I will say that we don't have clients sign that part, but that's pretty cool. I think that helps legitimize it even more, because we want to work with people who want to be good clients too and help set us up for success. So I love that. Other tools we use, honestly, are the principles themselves. We make sure that we're delivering on them and really talking about them in those deeper dive meetings. We do something called quarterly business reviews, or business reviews, because they're not always quarterly. Sometimes they're monthly, sometimes they're quarterly or just half year, but we really dive into those pieces of the principles and show action there. So we revisit everyone's go-to-market strategy and really have those honest conversations about what's working, what's evolving. So that's the transparency there. We're also pretty aggressive on setting KPIs and defining those success metrics. So we really make sure that we share the hard data and results, or sometimes it's the soft data and results, and just a conversation around the progress that's been made. But the main idea here is, don't be afraid to remind your customers of the value you bring and the successes you're having together. There's so much joy in being able to look back on a month or a quarter and say, wow, look at all that we've accomplished together and how this meets our goals. Another key thing is that we just simply ask, how can we better support you? You know, we go through in our quarterly business reviews a list of questions to really dive in to those meatier topics about their business, but we end with, how can we better support you? And it's pretty amazing how many things come out of just by asking that question, what people have had on their minds or that they want to talk about. Another tool that we use is we do an annual client satisfaction survey, really to get that pulse check on how everything is going overall. So we ask the traditional NPS question, and I'll go into some of those metrics in a minute, but we understand our net promoter score if people are likely to recommend us. And then we also ask some open-ended questions as well, just to get a good judge on how the relationship is going. And then lastly, I feel like I would be remiss to not talk about our people. I mean, they are some of the biggest reasons that we're successful, and, you know, them having the consistency and having the same vision of what we're trying to do with our exceptional client experience, and then the flavor that they bring to the party themselves too. So when you are able to have all of those things working together, it is a really powerful thing.
Now, I love the point, Amy, that you make about about celebrating the things that are going well. So when we have our regroup meetings, a lot of times we'll start with, these are the things that are really working well. It's not just about all the things that we need to work on or problems that we're trying to address. We're trying to really use these regroups to talk about the positive things that are working well in the relationship too. And I think that's equally important because it really helps to solidify that partnership that you have.
Right. And some people say they are nervous about isn't it just going to feel like, it's bragging and it's like, no, because we're accomplishing this together.
Right.
If we have to feel the value in what we're bringing our clients, and we want to make it very easy for them to say, oh yeah, I remember that we did all of this. And especially when you meet quarterly, 3 months ago feels like a long time ago. So, making sure that everyone is celebrating those successes, as you said, is really important.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a mindset shift that we had to go through with our folks, because at first they were thinking these were going to be meetings to talk about things that weren't going right only. We're like, no, this is to talk about everything, and so when you start off with the positives that we all know, then the things that are maybe challenges or we'll call them opportunities to do better or to help. It's just a great segue into all of that, and it makes for a very positive, productive conversation.
I mean, our job too is to make our clients look good to their bosses, right? So when you give them those snippets, you give them those graphics, you make it very easy for them to ladder that up in their organization, the value that you're helping to bring them.
Before we jump into metrics, I know Amy's got some great things to share there. There were 2 questions actually that fit in really well with the topic we're on right now. So Robert commented, having the clients agree to their side of the relationship is a very interesting idea. What kinds of reactions do you see from them? And I know, Amy, you touched on it a little bit of that, moment to stand back, but any other comments from the rest of the panel for that question?
Chris, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so what's funny is the expectations, I know they look like there were a lot of things on ours. It was a little hard to see, but those expectations are kind of grouped in 3 main areas. And those individual points really kind of in many ways tied back to the reasons clients typically left. There were things that they did or things that we did on either side that would cause it. So we said, all right, if this is a problem that typically causes a problem in the relationship, let's make sure we set that expectation up front that that doesn't come out, or that's not going to be a problem. Let's all understand that in order to have the whole idea behind this expectation summary is these are the things that we both need to deliver on for us to mutually have a successful relationship. And so I saw someone else asked, so when we first talked with clients, it's funny, I think we were really nervous about getting it out there. I think clients were really impressed that we had put the thought process together, and a lot of the initial clients said, hey, can we keep a copy of this, because we might want to do this with our clients. We were worried that they were going to be put out by the fact that we had any expectations of them. They were really pleased that not only did we have expectations of them, but that we had some expectations of ourselves that we promised that we would commit to as well. The fact that they're mutual expectations and in a lot of ways mirrored really, really helped. We did kick around the idea of having the client sign it. We eventually decided that we would set that aside. We just sort of had a mutual commitment, but we did joke around about that. But somebody else asked about what happens when someone doesn't, what do you do when someone doesn't keep some of those commitments? Well, the problem that we often used to have in a relationship, because we didn't set expectations up front, we would come to them later and say, hey, we have a problem that, and it's on your side and we need to talk about it. And usually they were frustrated as well in the relationship by that point. And now it just looked like we were bringing up random things that were their fault. Well, now since we've set expectations up front, one of my favorite expectations that we have is fostering a spirit of partnership and a mutual characterized by mutual respect with full buy-in of your team. Well, now if we have somebody who's undermining our relationship, which sometimes happens a few months into the relationship, then we can point back to that particular expectation. Remember when we talked about this at the beginning of the relationship, that we need this for a successful relationship. Now it's not coming out of the blue. Now we've said at the beginning of the relationship, here's what, you committed to this, and you're not holding up your end of the bargain. And sometimes we'll say, well, we're not holding up our end of the bargain, or it's keeping us from holding up our end of the bargain. So that's where, to answer the other person's question, what happens when someone doesn't keep, it's actually great. It's really freeing now, because it's easy to point back to something that we all agreed to at the beginning of the relationship.
And we have clients that use it on us, which is great.
Absolutely.
We love that, actually, because I think the worst thing for us, and it happens so many times, is that they might be frustrated about something, but don't bring it up to us, and we don't even know that there's a problem. And those are those things that, if something keeps me up at night, it would be that the not knowing piece. So it gives us a great way to reinforce, hey, here's your opportunity to do the same, and we're going to be okay with it. And we can't fix it if we don't know, or make it better, or collaborate if we don't know. So please call us, let's bring it up. And now we've got a forum from which to do so on both sides. And we have had folks that have called and said, hey, remember that expectation document? Well, here's some things that I think maybe we need to talk about. And we're like, all right, we're all over it. It's so much better than them making a decision to leave us or do something else, and we don't even know that's happening until they call us to say, hey, we're giving you the 30 days, and we never had the opportunity to work through something.
All about fostering the conversation. That's all we're trying to do, right? Give them an easy way to talk to us about what's working or not working. And Chris, I love that you brought up too of the impetus for those client expectations. It's exactly right. Where have we run into roadblocks before, and how by setting the expectations can we try to not hit those again? And what I find too is that in the beginning of a relationship, those become the red flags. You start to see them right away if somebody's, not doing what you would really like them to do here. So it's just a great way to say, hey, let's talk about this, because this isn't quite working for us right now. So how do we get to a place where we're both benefiting?
No, it's great. It's such a mindset shift. Like we talk, our teams, I hear them, and they'll be like, okay, this on the accounting. And then from an accounting perspective, if we want to do great accounting, we're going to do this. Now I hear conversations of, from a client experience perspective, we probably need to think about it this way. And I'm like, what? Like that's so it's starting to become, second nature. And that's really the goal, that it just becomes incorporated into how you think about the approach.
That's a perfect segue, actually, Deanna, as we start talking about how do you track this? So obviously your team commenting is one great soft metric, but I know, Amy, you've got some hard metrics that you can actually use to help show how your client experience is tracking.
Sure. So we do an annual client satisfaction survey just through a survey tool. We use Typeform, but you could do a Survey Monkey. But what we really focus on is that NPS, or that Net Promoter Score. Lisa, if you want to go to the next page. So it really focuses on the main question, the NPS question of how likely are you to recommend us? So this is actually the results from our 2020 client satisfaction survey. So we have an NPS score of 74 this year, which I am thrilled about. We have come a really long way since 2017, so it's been really cool to see. But basically, people rate you on this scale of 0 to 10. And if you are rated a 9 or a 10, that person is considered a promoter. Unfortunately, a 7 and 8 don't do anything for you, which is a huge bummer because 8 still seems good, but it's you really want that 9 or a 10. So people who rate you a 7 or 8 are really just called passives. And then if you are rated a 6 or lower, those are your detractors. So what we do when we get these results is obviously, we love our promoters, but we're really trying to move those passives up to being promoters. I will say the majority of these were 8s, not 7s, but it's really, what can you do with the experience that will get them to give you that 9 or 10? And then what we do with these results is, again, it's just another area to spark a conversation. It's a great way when clients take the survey. And this year we actually kept it very simple. We only had the NPS question, and then we had 2 open-ended questions. In years past, we actually asked questions in the survey about our exceptional client experience principles. How are we doing on giving you thought leadership? How are we doing on the honest consultation? It made the survey a little lengthy, so we decided to cut it down. But the spirit of it is there to make sure that we're having that conversation. And then we also, we take that feedback really seriously and we elevate it right away. We make sure that we have the top to top conversations if there's something going on. And we just make sure that we talk to our clients about it in an everyday setting, to make sure that that ease and that comfort level is there when, wanting to go through those results. This also feeds into our internal reviews and acknowledgments for our team. So these are great ways to give our team snaps when we get what we call our kudos, when we get, good comments back from clients, or we see very good NPS scores from clients. So it's just a nice way to also recognize the team. And then, there have been years where we've had detractors. There have been years when we've been down there. And it's then really understanding the why and making sure that we're doing things to correct that. Other hard metrics we look at are retention rate. Do people want to keep working with us? Also on the opposite end, what's our attrition rate? And then revenue growth. So it's one thing to retain those clients, but another goal is obviously that you want to grow those clients as well. And then we have some soft metrics. So some of that is just that open dialogue in those larger quarterly meetings or your weekly status calls, really using the power of those client relationships to have those honest conversations. We also do monthly red, yellow, green assessments of each client relationship. So we're able to monitor how a client's doing. And then we have steps. If we feel a client is in yellow or red, we have predetermined things that, levers that you can pull, to try and help get things back on track or, get that client or get that team what they need to put that relationship back in green. And then another soft metric is just advocacy. When clients agree to, happily do a referral or to give us a testimonial or, sing our praises or, share why we're so great with others, that word of mouth, that's when we know we're also really doing something right.
So Amy, we had a question come in from the audience, actually 2 of them. One, could you expound on the NPS? Do you know who's filling out the survey?
You can do it either way, but yes, we don't keep it anonymous. We do like to know, and we make it very clear because they're at the beginning part of the survey, they're re-putting in their name. So for us, because of how closely we work with our clients, we really wanted to make sure that we were able to have that follow-up and really know, where we need to dive in further.
But to be clear, if you've got a large sampling, you have 10,000 people you're sending it out to, and you don't necessarily need to know who is saying it, you can always insert this into an email, an after-call survey, whatever it is, and it can be anonymous.
Yes, there's so many different, softwares out there, programs that, yes, you can take a question and pop it into an email, or, when you send an invoice or you send an order confirmation, it can have a one question, how did we do today? How did we service today? One of our new clients works with a service called Smileback. And that just gives them weekly results on, how are people saying they did, or, what are different things that they need to improve upon.
And I know Deanna too, obviously we've got at Red Caffeine a bit of a toolkit, if you will, in some of the scores, but you talked a little bit about your regroup meetings earlier and how those fit in really nicely with what Amy's been sharing as well.
Yeah, so I think we kind of hit the details on the regroup. So we also, I will put in a plug for the NPS. We use that as well to kind of track overall where we are, and we work those into the regroups just to remind our clients that we are going to be sending that and that we're looking for feedback over and above what we're going to get in the meeting, and it does work really well. And ours are not anonymous, that we know who's sending them. So, you know, it's been a nice measurement tool for us on the back end.
Great. So as we start looking to close this out, and I see we're just over 12:45, but we have a few questions left. So appreciate everyone hanging with us, and by all means continue to use the chat function and the Q&A to ask your questions. I know as we start looking ahead, obviously we mentioned in the beginning, we're all working remotely, or some of us are, some essential workers are still in the office, but really what has COVID done as we start talking about the exceptional client experience? So Deanna or Chris, would you like to start off with that?
It's been really interesting. You know, we, because we're an outsourced accounting function, we're not on site every day with our clients. We're not their internal accounting department or their external accounting department. But we do have an aesthetic of sitting down with our clients once a month and going through their financials with them. And those meetings have primarily been in person. And so obviously with over the last 6-7 months, we've had to move to a Zoom-based approach. We found that we've been fortunate. We do have good relationships with our clients, and we've been able to maintain some of that intimacy. And so, you know, thank goodness for kind of the tool of Zoom. And we were already using it pretty extensively before in communicating, having meetings with our India team and having meetings with our clients that weren't in town, where we did have to meet with them. We're meeting with them once a month, but maybe only traveling there a few times a year. So, you know, I think it's easier to build rapport when you're in person, and hopefully we can, when things do open up and we can do that, that will certainly help. I think we put a lot of deposits in the bank with a lot of the things that we did kind of going into this, and I'm just really thankful. We rolled out our client experience initiative in really December, over the fourth quarter last year, but really December was the meat of the 2-day training with everyone. And I'm really glad that we put these tools in everyone's hands, because I'm not sure we would have been as diligent with maintaining those relationships in the same kind of way. As accountants, without those tools in place, our natural instinct is to just do the accounting and not bug our clients. And having some of these tools in place and this I guess, bar of getting to trusted advisor, it really encourages us to build those relationships even during a time where it's a little bit harder to do. I mean, the beginning of being a trusted advisor is building rapport. And gosh, that's a harder thing to do when you're not in person. But thank goodness we had some of these regroup meetings and some of these other tools in place so that we could try and do that to carry us through this time. So I don't know, that's my assessment of kind of where we are. We're going to be okay. I'm looking forward to where we can spend a little more time on site with our clients and face to face, and have them in our offices too. Deanna, you want to add anything to that? Or?
I'll just say one thing really quick. Because we went through that training, I think we really encouraged and empowered our folks at the team level when COVID hit they could get on the phone with their clients, and if their client had a particular need, or they made some of those decisions on the fly, and was able to, you know, use the opportunity to adjust to scope really quickly or what have you. And being open book management also helps us to do that, because our teams know where they stand probably better than Chris and I do on where we are with our relationships sometimes. But so they just felt more than anything empowered to have those conversations, where before they might not have felt that. But going through the training that we went through, and we just encouraged them, you know, so there was some opportunities there in a time that was difficult to proactively reach out to the clients, and then on the spot, if they needed something, make a decision with them on how to move forward, and being able to act quick, you know, was important.
I would just reiterate what you do as a team and how you keep everybody happy and working together and, you know, moving towards that. And especially because we need each other more than ever right now. You know, we have just as many clients who are, you know, struggling through this time as we do that are doing phenomenal. So it's also meeting each client where they are and making sure that they know that you're available.
Absolutely.
That rounds out perfectly to our final question that we had, at least for our panel today, is really as you start looking at what's next. So Amy, you brought up a great point of meeting your clients where they are. Deanna, you know, talking about empowering your team. But when you start looking at the ultimate client experience or an exceptional client experience, how do you project out what that lifetime looks like? So Chris, I know you had a few thoughts on the client lifetime value. That was one of the impetuses for you starting this journey. So anything you'd like to share with our team as we round out today's webinar?
Yeah, I think that quantifying attrition piece up front was one of the most eye-opening pieces. And you know, our typical client relationship is sort of $3,000 to $5,000 a month. Well, when you're losing 20 to 25 clients a year, that, as Deanna said, it adds up to $1 million a year in recurring revenue in some years. And for a business that right now is a $6 million business, that's significant. And so I think it is so important to, you may have an idea in your head like I did as to what you thought, you know, the attrition was, but quantifying it is huge. And then we also fell into this trap of, oh, well, they went out of business, so, you know, we didn't really have any control over that. And that's true. We did quantify controllable versus uncontrollable attrition. And we still track both. But the only time it's uncontrollable attrition is they went out of business, or they got bought by somebody that already had an accounting department. We didn't have a choice. Any other thing is within our control. And so quantifying those, really understanding your attrition is just sort of a big piece of it. So I would say what really is, as we look forward, one of the things that we're most excited about, and I may be stealing some of Deanna's thunder on this, is somebody who was on our work group for client experience really emerged as a leader, and someone who's just not just passionate about client experience, but was exceptional at delivering a great client experience. And we've now promoted her from one of our line controllers up to the director of client experience. So she runs this whole program across our organization. So maybe she's the Amy of Venturity. But it's just, that's just one of the most awesome things for me as the leader of the organization, to see someone emerge from the group with a passion around something that we really desperately needed as an organization. And she has taken it and just run with it in ways that I never could have done. And Deanna would probably say, in ways that we never could have done. She has such a passion for it and a knack for it. So that's what I'm excited about with the future with us.
Yeah, agreed. Amy, you want to give us your thoughts and take us home?
Sure. So a couple of things. First, you know, Chris, I love what you said about, you know, this employee, you know, stepping up and, you know, being able to take things where you couldn't before. And I think that's also the beauty of peer groups and having other companies who are on this client experience journey and finding each other and being able to, you know, keep building something great, because that's where, you know, Lisa calls it, you know, borrowed brilliance, right? But, you know, you're still taking anything and you're making it applicable to your company, to your needs, to what your clients are looking for. But there's so much good to be out there. A similar situation, we, like most organizations, have a sales roadmap where, you know, you understand where each prospect is in the buyer's journey and what are the things that we're doing through each of those phases. And, you know, as that's been refined for us this year, you know, the light bulb went off of, oh my gosh, we need this for client retention. So what does our client retention roadmap look like? And so we've, you know, done a couple of brainstorm sessions so far, and it's been really fantastic to really think through, what are the life cycles of our clients? You know, what are those phases? How are we, you know, breaking down where each relationship is, and what do those clients need at that time? Because a client that you're just bringing on needs something very different than a client you've been working with a year, or a client, like we have clients you've been working with over 6 years. You know, how do you keep that fresh? What are the people, processes, tools, and technology that we're going to be able to use at each phase to get them to the next phase and keep that partnership in perpetuity.
Can you show that to us when you're done? We're still learning from you. That's a great observation, actually. That's exciting.
Yeah, so it's
been fun. Well, Deanna, Chris, and Amy, thank you so much for all of the information over this last hour. As we round out, thank you to our audience as well for asking questions today. But if you think of something afterwards and would like to reach out to any of our three panelists, we do have their contact information here on the screen. You can also reach out to them on LinkedIn as well. So again, Chris, Amy, and Deanna, thank you so much for your time today and all of your support.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Hope it was helpful for everyone.
Well, as we look ahead into 2 weeks, our next webinar is on October 22nd, featuring Rick Curry. He is the Director of Human Resources and Operational Development at BlissDex. So Rick is really going to talk to us about revitalizing your recruiting. And he has so many wonderful tips to share. Rick has been with several businesses such as Budget Rent-A-Car, Leah Sophia, and most recently with BlissDex. He is a networking guru. And so he's really going to come to us and help us share some tips, such as 12 tips to hiring your next senior leader, how your brand affects hiring anyone from a Packer to a PhD, and how you can make mentoring, which is one of those things we all talk about, but how can you actually make mentoring measurable? So very excited for the session. So again, 2 weeks, October 22nd. You can go to redcaffeine.com right now and go ahead and register. We'll have Rick's registration page up shortly. And we'll also have a link to it in our follow-up email, which will include the video from Deanna, Chris's, and Amy's panel today. So again, appreciate everyone's time. If this was your first time joining us for Business as Unusual, I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to send us some feedback, or if you have any other questions about Red Caffeine or Venturity, you can reach out to us at connect@redcaffeine.com. Thanks so much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.